the most powerful starting point for my story was actually the 2 different times that I've been on the edge of suicide. Those were the most transformational moments in my life. And the first happened actually when I was quite young, only 13, after my family fell apart because my father was basically put in jail and our family went bankrupt. We lost everything that we had and had to start from scratch. My parents got divorced. It was a very public scandal where I grew up, and basically I started high school. This happened 2 weeks before I started high school. So I started high school with my dad's, face plastered all over the front page of the paper, and many students, families, their parents had lost jobs in this debacle, and it was a point where everything I knew crumbled, and I didn't think I could be here anymore. And at the time we lived in a condo, and I went to the roof of the condo and was on the ledge and considering jumping off. But something in that moment caused me to crumple back off the ledge and to vow to really live for myself and to take care of myself and to become very self-sufficient in that time. That still wasn't my divine awakening, unfortunately. I became much more isolated and independent and renegade, but it did help me to continue my life and to get out of the small town that I grew up in and end up in Ivy League college. And it was after I finished the Ivy League that I graduated with a degree in architecture and a minor in fine art, and I moved to New York City. And it was the weekend after September 11th. And I was really moving there to chase the sort of proverbial Big Apple dream because my father had always said, if you can make it there, you can make it anywhere. And, even though my father went to jail based on greed and a series of other circumstances, he was a wild risk-taking entrepreneur, and he was my first teacher in that realm. And so, once I moved to New York, I really wanted to embody that. I didn't have any intention of using my degree conventionally. So I transformed into an eclectic entrepreneur and performance artist instead. And on this path, I'm a Scorpio, and a shout out to all my Scorpios that are in their birthday month. My birthday was yesterday. So, I really had this curiosity about our human condition and about the underworld. And so on this sort of path in New York, I ended up spending over 10 insatiably curious years living as this series of identity players, basically to compile anthropological field research on our human condition. And it was during this time that I was an internationally known dominatrix, a celebrity stylist, an avant-garde fashion maven, a pop rapper. That's just a few of the many incarnations. I dominated congressmen, organized international fashion shows from Iceland to Berlin, performed in numerous nightclubs, and I even penned a memoir at that time. And I was really screwing the status quo at every opportunity, which is something I've always done. But at that time, my ego really got lost in these loveless realms in fashion and art, and I started to feel empty. And I became really selfish, and I was a shut down shell of myself. I was bitchy, I was narcissistic, I was a diva, essentially. And I was really lost in this shadowy land of illusion. I had really lost my own path and forgotten the truth of who I was. And instead, that was replaced with a full-blown hedonist and fame monster. And in the process, I ended up totally bankrupt, financially, spiritually, emotionally. It was like my heart had this neon sign over it, just blinking, closed, closed, closed. And this was the second precipice of suicide. And I didn't want to be here anymore. I didn't feel like I could do this thing called life. It was just too hard. And this was a Saturday night, and luckily I had heard about a spiritual center that met on Sunday mornings. And a friend of mine came to stay with me that evening because I said, basically, either take me to Beth Israel Psych Ward or be with me until I can find some salvation. And it was when I walked through the doors of that spiritual center that my journey back home to myself began. When I first showed up there, I sat in the back and I just cried and cried and cried because I was hearing truth for the first time. And I kept going back week after week, and it was just enough to keep me going, just enough to pull me out of that dark hole. And it was there that I started to hear about One Spirit Interfaith Seminary program. And after 2 months, I had heard about it about 8 different times. So the synchronicity of the universe was really telling me it's time. And I had a deep intuition that I needed to be in school that fall. And I had applied to graduate art school and didn't get in. And in the sort of divine shitstorm that occurred, when I lost my job, I lost my home, I, lost the remainder of the clients that I had. I didn't get into grad school. My partner at the time dumped me. All of those things sort of were on the edge of this precipice as well. And still, underneath all of that, I knew I needed to be in school. And I followed that voice. I followed that intuition and applied to One Spirit Seminary and ended up getting accepted. And that's when my journey of healing and remembering who I was really began.